Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our channel. And on today's episode of Sat or Sitting and Talking, we just wanted to have a conversation about our immigration story and how we came, or I guess how our experience was growing up being immigrants here in America,
Hmm.
the US of A. Yeah, so do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Sure, I can start.
Okay.
So let me paint a picture of how my family and I came to this country. Well, first it started off with my parents. Well, I guess not my parents, but my dad's side of the family. His family moved or immigrated to Portland. I don't know what year that was, but they came here before my mom and I did. I was born, and I think it was like 2 months after I was born, my dad and his family left. And so I'm sure a lot of people that are friends with Asian people that have immigration stories is similar to this. Uh, they came here first so that they can sponsor my mom and I to come here. And that's kind of how the situation would work for people that want to come to America from another country. You need a sponsorship or whatever like that. And so that took like several years. Um, we didn't leave Vietnam, which is where my parent or my mom and I were, uh, until I was about six or seven. That was back in 1996. So yeah, I remember leaving my grandparents because we were living with them for a little bit, and on my mom's side, and then like my aunts and uncles, all the friends that I had. So basically, just moving to another country, um, not really knowing anything about it, just that we're gonna go live with my dad. And growing up, I didn't really uh, remember seeing my dad a lot. I know that he did come from what my mom's told me and the pictures that we have. He came to my birthdays a lot, and well, a lot, like every year, of course, Whenever I had my birthday, he was there. And I said it like my birthday's like every month. um, and I'm sure he came on other occasion too, but like, as a kid and a toddler, you don't really remember these things. And I do remember seeing him and also thinking like, who is this man with my mom?
Mm.
Um, but I also never really thought anything of it, like not really thinking like, oh, where's my dad or
Yeah.
like who's my dad? And I don't think that was like a topic I brought up to my mom a lot. I just remember her telling me about my dad and also how they used to write letters to each other. Super romantic.
Mm.
Um, but I do remember this particular time when he sent a letter to her, or I don't remember if she was going to send it to him, but it had like perfume on the letter and it smelled
Mm.
really good. And I was just
That's
like,
very romantic.
yeah, and I was like, I don't remember if my mom was doing that or if my dad did it, but I remember smelling it. And I was like, ooh, that smells really good.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and I think she would read it to me and stuff. And of course, I don't remember what the contents of the letter
Mm.
was. I just remember the experience and like all that. But anyway, so my mom and I came to America, came to Portland. Like we just flew from Vietnam. I don't know if we had like a layover anywhere, but we went from Vietnam to Portland. And I remember the journey itself was like, it was quite an experience because neither my mom and I spoke English at all. So we don't know anything. And I remember running around the airport with her, and it's just this lady and this young kid kind of lost in a sense. And I remember
Mm.
there was this man who was very nice, who he spoke Chinese and Vietnamese, which was pretty cool. She was able to get some help from him, and so he helped us out by like telling us story or not stories, but telling us like where to go, and then also like kind of uh talking to some of the people, like the flight attendants and stuff for us. And so he was basically helping us when we were getting there. And I remember when we landed or we were about to land in Portland, my mom went to the bathroom I think on the airplane and changed into like a traditional Vietnamese dress, which is
Whoa.
already like impressive in of itself. Like changing on the
Yeah.
airplane. If you've been on an airplane, which I'm sure everybody has, the bathroom there is like so small you can't do anything. But she was able to put on this dress on the airplane, and so when we landed, she was like all in this traditional ao dai, and it was like white and flowing. I remember I was thinking, dang, where are we going?
Yeah,
And then we got off the
yeah.
plane, and my parents, or my grandparents, my dad's side, and his brothers and sister, my aunts and uncles were all there, like at the gate at the time when like people can go to the gate to pick up people. Oh man, the 90s. And so we were getting picked up, and then we were going back to uh the house. It was just like a condo or apartment where everybody lived, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we lived there for like quite a while until like I was 7 or 8, and then we moved like to like Northeast Portland. But I've lived in Portland my whole life, so I've seen a lot of changes around here, and so yeah, that's just my story of how I came here. But I'll let her tell her story before I get into more of like how I grew up.
Yeah. My story is, pretty similar. Of course, my parents came to the U.S. first. My dad came before my mom and I. So he was kind of going back and forth. I think my dad lived in quite a few places. I think he lived like in New York, Chicago,
Damn.
California, like, just working around to save money to keep going back to Mexico. I don't really remember a lot of that because I was really little. But then he was able to bring my mom over, so they left me in Mexico with my grandparents. I don't honestly don't remember how old I was, maybe like 3 or no, 4 years old, maybe. And I don't remember how long he left me for. I don't even think it was that long, maybe less than a year. But yeah, so I grew up with my grandparents and my cousins. They all took care of me. I still have some great memories from living in Mexico, and my uncles taking care of me, even though my uncles were only like 10 years older than I was. So at least like the youngest ones are. So if I was, they were probably like 13, 14, and they were like taking care of me. But then my dad went back to get me, and I guess when he got there, I didn't know who he was. I cried because he was like trying to take me away from like my grandparents, I think, because it had been such a long time since I'd seen him. It's when you're that young, like you haven't seen anybody for so long, you just kind of don't remember them. So yeah, and then we came here on an airplane. That was my first time on an airplane, and I don't remember too much about it. I just remember thinking like, "Oh, this is so cool," and you see the clouds. But I'm pretty sure I got motion sickness because I've always gotten motion sickness in the car, the airplane. I always just throw up. So I'm sure that happened. And then we landed in Iowa. That's where my parents were living
Whoa.
for a while. Yeah. And I remember the little apartment that we had. We didn't have any furniture, I think. I think we might have just had like a little small TV with a dial, I think.
Damn. That's
I
ancient.
think. I don't remember if there was a remote control, but yeah, I remember screen being pretty small. I don't think we had like a couch or anything like that for a while. But that was a good experience. It was very cold from what I remember. There was tornado warnings, people in the apartment building trying to like run out of the building because there was a tornado warning, which I never got to see. So I
What?
just saw the chaos from the people, but there was never really a tornado. But after living there for a while, I don't even remember how long we lived there, but then we came to Oregon where we had some family. And yeah, definitely same experience in our apartment. We had maybe 5, 6 people living in a two-bedroom, one-bathroom apartment,
Yeah.
just to kind of save money, which back then I feel like it was a little bit easier to get so many people in one place. Our manager was really nice. I know once I would kind of try to hide that there were so many people living there, but she knew and she was like really nice about it. She knew our situation and she was like fortunately she let us continue to stay there even though it was pretty crowded. But yeah, and then after a while, my parents were able to buy a house. We've always lived in a really small community where there's like really nothing there, at least in the city that they live in. But yeah, that's pretty much what I remember my experience like getting to America. I remember everything was just so new. I didn't know any English. Like my very first experience in preschool, I cried because I didn't know any English at all. And I think my mom might have stayed with me that day.
Uh,
I don't remember, but I think she might have stayed with me because, I didn't want to be in a place I didn't know with other kids I didn't know. I didn't understand what they were talking about. So, unfortunately, that's how it is when you come to a new place. You don't know the language or anything like that. But yeah, that's pretty much how my experience was coming here.
dang, that's intense.
Yeah.
Moving around, I think that is probably the hardest part, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're just starting to, I guess, become acclimated to your new environment, and then you guys move from Iowa to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when she first told me that, I was like, "What?
Yeah.
Iowa? Why? Of
I don't
all
really
places?"
remember. I think we might have had some family there. It was really small, and I think there was just like not even like a police station in that small town we were in. I think you had to go to like the next
Dang.
town. I think there was just like one cop that would patrol like that area. But yeah, that was definitely an experience. I remember there was a lot of bunnies around in the wild, like just
Because
around that
they are
area.
good at
Yeah.
multiplying.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I remember. Okay, so getting into my story of growing up here. I remember living in, I guess it's an apartment, but yeah, my family, my mom, my dad, and myself, my aunt, my uncle, and then my aunt's boyfriend, I guess, at the time. And then my other uncle and his family lived next door. Like literally, like
Mm,
we shared a wall.
yeah.
And so the family was very close. And I think that was what ended up happening for a while. Because then after that spot, they bought a house like not too far from that area, and then everybody again moved in the same house. And this house had like, let's see, one, two, three, four bedroom and two bathrooms. My parents got like the master bedroom with their own bathroom, so then like we lived in that corner.
Mm.
And then my uncle, my dad's youngest brother, lived across from us with his girlfriend, and then my grandma and grandpa like had their own room, but then my aunt like shared a room with my grandma. It was
Yeah.
like nuts. But like I remember growing up going to school here, the one thing I remember having dealt with a lot was bullying. And I mean, of course, that still happens today, but like in a different form. But now I can like stand up for myself and talk shit back. But back then, like it was just like you don't speak English. I was gonna say you don't speak the language, so it came together. You don't speak the English. I have a hard time speaking English. Um, so yeah, like not knowing the language definitely made it more of a challenge for me because when I first started school, I had already gone through that experience of like crying when my mom left me at the school in Vietnam, but now it's like different in America because one, you don't speak the language.
Yeah.
And so what are you supposed to do when nobody understands what you're saying? All you can do is cry, which is what I did a lot. And I remember being put at this table with all these other kids, and there was one other person that was Vietnamese, and it was a girl. And I think she might have was born here or she grew up here or something. I think she was born here. The way she was talking, it felt like she was very much a spoiled brat. In a sense of like she didn't want to be dealt with, or she didn't want to be the one to deal with me. And I mean, now thinking back on it, it was a lot of responsibility
Yeah.
to put on like another person who's also like in the same age. And so she didn't want that burden. And so I was just like, well, there's nobody else in this
Yeah.
classroom. The teachers obviously don't speak Vietnamese. And I made friends with one other kid that was in another classroom, and he was like probably like my closest friend. throughout the time I was there, because he was always there to basically talk to me, and he was really nice to me. And I remember one time I was crying. Teachers couldn't figure out what had happened, and so they went to his classroom, took him out of his classroom, and brought him here. And then they are like, "What's wrong with him? Like, what? Why is he crying?" And then he asked me, and like, I was really reluctant to tell him because, I didn't want to cause any more problems. But like, I was getting bullied at my table by these other kids.
Oh.
Like, they took my stuff and they like kind of ruined my stuff. Like, I remember this very vividly. It's funny how you always remember trauma better than like you remember happy times. But I remember one of the kids, this white kid, who was friends with the Viet girl, and like I felt like they just got together and ganged up on me because one, I was, not knowing what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So he took my pencil, and then like it was like, those wooden pencils with the little eraser on top, and like I don't know why the hell he did this, but like he bit the top of my pencil where like the eraser sat, and then it just fell out. And then I was like so upset, and I was like, why would you do that? Like,
Yeah.
thinking to myself, like, what was the point of
Yeah.
that, and what purpose would that serve of you doing that except just make me upset?
Being mean.
Yeah, and so I just started crying because I was just like, dude, literally, that's my stuff. This kid just took it and ruined it. And so then, as a child of immigrants, it's already difficult enough to get like supplies and all this other stuff. And so, you're taught as an immigrant child to take care of your things and like, make this last forever, basically.
Yeah, especially like when parents tell you like you have to take care of this, it's expensive, blah blah blah, all this, and then somebody else ruins it, and now you're the one that has to tell your parents like it wasn't
Yeah,
me, and then your
exactly.
parents get upset at you because they're
Oh
like,
yeah, she knows.
yeah, I know.
That's basically
Yeah.
kind of what happened. But then, like, I would tell my mom that these kids are mean to me at school, and then my mom would tell my dad, and then I don't know if anything was done because it never stopped. Like, even till like middle school, it was like it felt like it just got worse. But like in middle school, it got physical. Like when you're young, it's like verbal, kind of like making fun of and stuff like that. But if you don't understand, it doesn't matter. But when it gets physical in like middle school, that's when things get like kind of dangerous. So I do remember getting like not necessarily beat up, but like kind of like shoved around, and like also actually I got tackled twice, like one back to back after school. I was like literally going out to go to my mom picked me up. I was walking down the school, and there's like this little hill, and I'm just walking down, and I see these two kids who I've always had problems with, like running up towards me, like full speed running. I'm just like, okay. And I see them running towards me. I'm thinking, oh my God. And I'm like just standing there bracing for it. And then I get tackled right into the bush.
Oh.
And that's one of them, right? And then the other one was waiting for his friend to get up, and then waited for me to get up to tackle me back into the bushes again. And I remember hearing from a distance, like girls just saying, "You guys are mean." And then I was just like, man, you guys are messed up. You're just trying to show off to these girls.
No.
And I got up, and they just started laughing and walked away. And then I got into the car with my mom, and I just started crying.
Oh.
And I think this was like the most I cried for a long time since I was getting older. And I was just like, man, this sucks. And my mom asked me what happened, and I couldn't even tell her. Like, I just got bullied and tackled into the bushes for no reason other than just walking down the hill. And I think, when kids see that you're an easy target, they'll just continue doing it. Especially when you're Asian. That's like, you've heard it more lately. It's been happening more lately. Like, that's what Asian kids growing up experience all the time. But now it's like an adult, it kind of feels like you're reopening that wound again. But like now it just makes me angry seeing it happen. Cause I'm just like, I'm just waiting for somebody to come up to me to try to start something. But like, I know better. I try not to like overreact to it, but like it's kind of hard when you're hearing all this stuff happen to your people, and then all you can do is just sit and watch other people say like, "Oh my gosh, they're just reacting to it." It's like, do something. Just don't just stand there. Like, we're all part of the same community, right? Like, help each other out. So yeah, that was pretty much my experience growing up here.
Yeah.
And it's gotten a lot better. I've definitely made friends with with people who are we have same values, and like our alignment on things are similar, and we have same interests, and they're always there to help me out, which is nice because I always feel like you're always alone when you get here, and you don't know who to turn to because you can't trust anybody.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's true. That is hard. I feel like, yeah, a lot of us have been bullied, especially if you're an immigrant. Like, you don't know how to speak the language, how to pronounce certain things, so you always get made fun of your pronunciation. For me, I don't remember any instances like that where I was bullied that way, but it was definitely more like verbal. And a lot of times, I don't think it was just because, I was Mexican, but I was also just a little bit overweight, so I got bullied for that when I was younger. But yeah, I definitely heard comments like, oh, this is America, you should speak English.
Oh yeah.
When you were like, I was speaking Spanish. And a lot of the times, what happens even as a child, when you're an immigrant, you have to do a lot of interpreting for your parents, a lot of filling out documents, going to doctor's appointments. So there's a lot of responsibility. So I feel like ever since I was young, I've always had like that, you know, responsibility like on my shoulders, where I feel like as an adult it's really affected me, where I feel like I have a strong sense of responsibility. Like I feel like I always have to do the right thing. And I feel like, yeah, since I was a child, I feel like that's just been a constant like thing that has been going on in my life. And also being the oldest. So when you're the oldest, like my experience growing up was having to take care of my sibling, of my brother. Even though like at a young age, I think it was like maybe 9 years old, and my brother was like maybe 3, and that's when we were left alone, without a babysitter. I think I might have been maybe slightly older, but I feel like in my mind I was like 9. I mean, even if I was a little bit older, in my mind I remember being like 9 years old because my brother was really young. So, but my parents decided like, oh, you're old enough, you're responsible enough, you know how to use the phone, you know how to use the microwave, now you can take care of your brother, just because like it would just help save money with like babysitting, because when we were younger we were left with babysitters, and some of it were just the neighbors. So even if we didn't know them that well, it was just the neighbors, and we kind of like they kind of helped each other out that way, like by looking over after everyone else's kids. So in order to save money, we were left alone, and from that age, I learned to really be responsible, having to take care of my brother. Of course, when we were younger, we didn't have a good diet just because we were left alone. So it was just like pretty much anything that I could microwave. So it was
Maruchan.
Maruchan, a lot of hot dogs. Yeah, it's just a lot like regular like sandwich bread with sausage. That was it. Because sometimes like the regular hot dog bread was more expensive. So then we would just microwave that, and we would eat that. A lot of quesadillas. So definitely that from a young age, you just kind of learn to be responsible and take care of the younger sibling. So I feel like really I was responsible for like raising my brother. And my mom once asked me if I kind of like resented them that they like left us like alone and that I didn't have their attention. And I was like, no, like I don't resent them because I know like everything that they had to go through. I experienced it too, so I saw how hard they were working. Like when we first came here, I think there were like days maybe when I didn't even see my mom, because when we first came here, she was working at this rich lady's house looking after her kids.
Damn.
To make money. So yeah, I didn't really think much about it when I was that young. But as I got older, it kind of did feel like I didn't really know how to feel about it, just because it was like she was trying to, help provide for us, but then she was watching somebody else's kids. Meanwhile, I was just kind of left, with whoever could babysit me. But I told my mom, I was like, no, like I don't resent you because I saw everything that you were doing like for us to just give us like a better life. And I feel like sometimes that's why like my brother and I like our views are so different, because he grew up with like everything that I didn't have. So I saw like how hard my parents worked to give us like what we had growing up. So that's pretty much like how I grew up, which again just made me value like family more, and then also like hard work,
Mm.
which I feel like sometimes it's not such a good thing because I always saw my parents working. Like I feel like they always just feel guilty taking some time off, and now I feel like they're starting to be better at that too. But sometimes I feel like that was kind of passed on to me. So whenever I have like some downtime, I feel like I have to be doing something. Like I feel guilty not doing anything. But I'm slowly like starting to work on that. So now sometimes like we just on the weekends we just do nothing. But sometimes I feel like I'm like, oh, let's go on a walk. Like we gotta go
She don't know
on
when
a
to
walk.
quit.
Yeah. Yeah, so even that. So I think like definitely like my experiences growing up, what I saw with my family, like all of that kind of helped shape me like who I am, which sometimes can be, I like to say like toxic behaviors just because I feel like it's also really important to find that balance.
Mm.
And growing up, I feel like unfortunately like my parents didn't have that. So now that they're older, I kind of want to help give that to them so they can enjoy certain things that they didn't when my brother and I were younger because they had to focus a lot on us. So,
Damn, I wasn't expecting to tear up a little bit. That was a little intense. Man, my story sounded way less.
I mean, everybody, like, I don't know why. So you just made me get teary eyed now, just remembering that. But no, like, I feel like overall, I don't think it was, like, a bad experience. I think, everybody has like, all immigrants have, like, their own story and, like, how they grew up and things like that. But I can understand like why parents might feel that way, but I think it's important for us as like children to really like just see everything that they like went through. I
Mm.
kind of wish sometimes like that my brother, I don't know if he's gonna watch this, but I wish that he would have kind of maybe seen a little bit more of that. He was really young, like he when he started to grow up like at a certain age, like that's when like my parents kind of started to be able to provide a little bit more. But like when I was my brother's age, like I had to see everything that my parents had to go through and to kind of help get to where they are now. So I always really like admire them for that too, because sometimes that makes me think of like when I'm having like trouble with something, I'm like, damn, like I just think about what my parents went through. I'm like, they came to a new country without knowing like the language. They had
With
a
nothing.
yeah, with nothing, really like nothing. They left their whole family behind to be able to have everything that they do now. And it's kind of disappointing at how they came here and then they worked their whole lives. Whereas like sometimes like when I see some of my cousins in Mexico, like they're kind of pretty much just as well off,
Mhm.
even though like my parents had to go through all of this because they thought they would, be following like the American dream. But unfortunately, it's not like how they were promised, I guess, or
Yeah.
how like people made it seem.
It's
So
definitely the same topic throughout, like, I guess every immigration story is similar
yeah,
but different.
yeah,
Like, my parents also kind of had the same situation. Like, when she was telling her story, it definitely brought back more memories of, like, what happened with me. But except hers sounded way more wholesome. Like, I just sounded like a spoiled brat now that I think about it. Because, like, growing up, I was the oldest child in my family also. Like my sister was born and I had to help take care of her, but then to me it felt more like a burden because I was like always wanting to hang out with my friends,
yeah.
Like I didn't want to just stay at home just to watch the baby. And like now like thinking back on it, it's like, well, maybe I should have helped out more around the house. I should have helped out with this and that more. Like I should have been more grateful. But like I don't know. I think like I just so much wanted to be American, I guess.
Mm,
And I think that's something else that immigrants also struggle with. It's like you're never considered like too much of one or the other. You're always stuck in the middle.
yeah.
Like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
too Vietnamese, I'm not too American. I'm like somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Like going back to Vietnam probably nowadays, I would struggle for sure to speak with my cousins and my aunts and uncles there because my vocabulary is stuck at wherever I learned it at, which was like elementary, maybe even kindergarten. And of course, I speak to my parents at home, but it's very like elementary style. Like I don't speak as well as like some of these people would be speaking. And even if like they use these big words with me, I'm like, the hell they say?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm trying to get better at it just because I don't want to lose that part of my life. And eventually I want to pass it on to our kids. So like, they'll know Spanish, Vietnamese, and English.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like, but thinking back on it, I just remember how much I wanted to fit in with everybody around me. And so I would always try to, speak English, but not at home, of course. I can't do that. Like, it just felt wrong to
Mm-hmm.
just speak anything other than your own language at home. And I just remember like I started slowly losing it just because I don't speak to them anymore. Because I went through this like rebellious teenage phase in my life, and I just didn't talk to my parents, and I just thought everything they did was annoying to me. And so, I don't know if you went through that or if that was just something guys go through. But I remember like not wanting to be around my family because like, I not because they were embarrassing or anything like that. I just didn't want to be around them. And so I think that was just growing up and being a teenager. But like thinking back on it, I wish I was a little bit less stubborn and like hard headed and just listen to my parents every once in a while. And then there would probably be less problems and whatnot. But like I do remember helping my mom a lot growing up to translate and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty much growing up way faster than I should have. And I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to go out more was because I want to retain my youth and like have a childhood or something.
Yeah.
And it just felt like, every time we went and did anything, I was working. It was just like, this sucks. I don't want to do
Yeah.
this.
That's funny because it's like you trust me enough to translate these documents, but you don't trust me enough to go out with my friends. Like, you know,
Yeah.
certain things like that. And I feel like, yeah, there was definitely like, I feel like I went through a rebellious time too, just because I felt like seeing how other kids grew up and like what their families allowed them to do.
Oh yeah.
It was just like with my parents, like, you don't know, like, you're not from here, like it was just like that cultural like barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely saw that with my brother because my brother had more like white friends than I did. So whenever, and I mean, they were boys, so they of course had like more liberties and stuff. So when my brother would like hang out with his friends, he would see like how his friends responded to their parents,
Oh yeah, me
to their
too.
white parents, and so he kind of brought that home. So sometimes he would like talk back to my parents, and then he would bring up all these things like, oh, so and so's parents, like let him do this, and then of course my dad would always be like, well, we're not his parents, like we're not, we're Mexican, like these are our rules, it's my house, all
Yeah.
all of that,
I've heard
the
that too,
squiggles, yeah, as
actually.
long as you're under my roof, they're my rules. So that's when I feel like my brother also went to a rebellious phase, just because growing up with like in a different culture than what your parents are used to, it's really hard to like find that balance because like you said, it's like you don't really fit in anywhere. Like that's how I felt growing up in high school. Like I felt like I didn't really belong anywhere. I didn't belong with like that Mexican group, and then I also didn't have any like white friends. I was just kind of always like a loner because I was so focused in school because it was so ingrained in me that it was like I need to. I think I did this to myself where I was just like, my parents worked so hard to get here. I can't let them down. But I feel like that was just, like that's the pressure that I put on myself because my parents wanted me to do good in school, but I feel like, they cared that I got good grades. Like they wanted me to get A's and B's and things like that. But I feel like they never really like were super strict, maybe because they didn't have to, because I was doing it to myself.
Mm,
Where I just wanted to do like good in school. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to go to college, things like that. Just because in my mind, I was like, I can't let them down. Because I'm like, I saw how hard they worked to get here. I can't just like not
just
work
throw
that
it
hard. Yeah,
away. Yeah.
exactly.
Thank goodness my parents weren't like that. I mean, they wanted me to do well in school, but they never expected me to be getting straight A's. Like you know the stereotype of Asian parents and like their kids getting straight A's, and if it's anything less, it's like a beating at home.
Yeah.
Some people are like that. I'm not saying that that's not a thing. Like that's totally a thing that came from somewhere. So I mean, it's not coming from like it's not coming from fiction. It's definitely a real thing. Some of my friends in high school did go through that, but like I'm just like, thank goodness, I'm out here just skating by with a C and a B, and I'm good. Like my parents are just like, as long as you're passing high school, it's all good. And like now thinking back on it, it's just like, why was I so stressed out during high school? It's like it's not even that hard.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even that big a deal. Like going to college, finishing college, that's hard. And working at the same time, oh my goodness. Yeah, talking about like slacking off in high school, it was just like I felt like I should have just, I don't know, not like not slack off, but of course, like pay attention, but don't feel too stressed out about it. It's
Yeah.
like high school isn't the end all be all.
Yeah.
Like graduating high school is, yeah, I guess it's amazing, but try finishing college. Honestly, like,
Well, you have
what?
to finish high school first before you.
Well, yeah, but like, I think what it is though, like to me, like I noticed this like within the American culture that graduating high school is such a huge milestone in America for some weird reason. Like I remember when I went back to Vietnam to visit my cousins in like 2000 or something, I think I was like 10 or 11. And I remember telling them about my experience at school, and they were just telling me like what they go through, and I'm just like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's way more intense.
It's like what they're
in other
learning is
countries.
college level
Yeah.
at like a middle school age, and I
Yeah.
was just like, so I'm just starting to learn fractions, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I felt dumb just talking to my
Yeah.
cousins, which it was just like, well, you can't really compare the two because there is like way more intense. And so yeah, it was kind of sad because like I wanted to hang out with my cousins when I went to visit them, but they were in school and it was summertime.
Oh yeah.
And so I was just like, man, this sucks. And I was like very much Americanized at that time. And so I remember them telling me too, it's like maybe you should practice Vietnamese more, you're losing it. And I was like, oh shoot, I am. But yeah, like I don't know where I was going with that story. Sorry for these tangents, but it just
This
happens.
is experience in high school. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's how it was with like whenever I went to Mexico too. I just, even though I was in school in the U.S., I just felt like they were more advanced in what they were learning. Even though, you know, there it is a big deal like to graduate like middle school and like high school because like my parents didn't graduate high school.
Yeah, same with mine.
Yeah, so they were able to get their GED, which is also something I'm like super amazed at that they were able to finish high school without really knowing English that well, having like coming home from work and then like studying and then going to school after work too.
My mom did
they
that
have
too, actually.
yeah, well they have like kids and stuff like that. That always like amazes me. But I feel like graduating like high school, I feel like wasn't that hard for me just because I feel like I was just that was like my goal, and there were instances where I feel like I should have focused more on retaining information than good grades because I was just like doing things to get a good grade and then afterwards I'm like, okay, done with that, and then I
just
like
memory dumps.
Yeah, exactly. So for me that was just like high school. I was just like, all I have to do is like memorize this for the test and then do good on the test and then I could get a good grade because my goal was like to finish high school and then also being like I'm the first person from my family to go to college and having to navigate that all by myself. Like I didn't know the difference between like a master's and a bachelor's and all of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So when I went to my college counselor and she was talking about like undergrad and doing this and that, I'm like,
yeah,
what are you talking about? I don't know. And then I felt so dumb because she actually went and like, you don't know? Like I was like, no, like nobody from my family has ever gone to college. Like I didn't really know what, and then like having to apply for FAFSA all by myself without the help of anybody.
Oh God.
And all of that too. It was just like, things that you just kind of have to figure out because there isn't really anybody to help you. And if there is somebody, then they just kind of treat you like you're stupid for not knowing, even though you're doing that all like by yourself.
Man, you talking about that just brought back some traumatic experience when I had to fill out FAFSA too. Just talking to my parents about this, I'm just like, I'm confused, they're confused, like who do we talk to? And it's just like when you just said like your counselor or whatever saying like you don't know, they should be more open-minded, of course, because not everybody who is a minority has that opportunity. to graduate high school and also go to college. Like same thing with my family. Like my parents didn't go to college. And so that was the number one thing they were always pushing on me. Like for sure, like, I was always into like trying to date somebody. That was where my head was at in high school. And so there was like, graduate high school, go to college, and then you can have a girlfriend or whatever. It was weird for me to hear that because I'm a guy. And like I was just thinking, I was like, does anybody else experience this? And I see my other friends, they never gone through that. And I was just like, why is this only happening to me?
Yeah.
And so, like you hear my friends say like, well, maybe it's because you're the oldest. And I was like, yeah, maybe, I guess. But yeah, like having to go to college for the first time in your own family, it felt like a burden also at the same time. Because I was thinking when I was about to graduate high school, like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Like I felt like I was so pressured by society, it seems like, to find something and go towards it, even if I didn't want to. And at the time, the only interest that I was really wanting to study was like automotive, and like hearing how you can make a pretty good living out of it. And I was thinking in terms of like how um, useful the information I'm going to get from this is going to be in my life. It's like you drive down the highway, you see a lot of people stuck on the side of the road, not knowing what to do with their car. Granted, if it's like an electrical problem, there's not much you can do. But if it's like having to change your tire, I would at least want to know how to do that, and also change my own oil and all that stuff. And so I went down that route, went to the school, went to college for that, got my associates in it, went to work, and I hated it. It was just like nobody tells you like how you should be going to school. Like you should learn and figure out what you really want to do instead of going for like the traditional type of learning and like career paths that might not align with what you want. That's why we have like so many people around our age like just quitting their jobs and like trying to do something different now. And I just remember starting working at Honda. Like a lot of the older dudes, they were just like, "Man, you're in the wrong industry." I'm just like, "Dude, I just started. How you gonna tell me like I'm in the wrong place when like I'm literally going to school for it?" So that kind of like discouraged me a lot. And then eventually went from like working at odd end jobs and then went back to school. So yeah, man, I'm going to like a tangent of like school experiences now, but it's the same situation with like when you're immigrant being told that you need to be the breadwinner of the family pretty much. So you kind of get that pressure put on you. And then the second child doesn't really quite get that much pressure because like they know better nowadays. And so yeah, I kind of felt a little envious of my sister. It's where we both have younger siblings and they kind of experienced it differently than we did.
Yeah.
So,
I think so. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I honestly don't remember my parents ever like pushing me to go to school for like a certain career, but I do know that they didn't want me to have a good job. I feel like that's their
yeah.
like to be able to provide for myself and things like that. But I feel like I put a lot of pressure just on myself. I feel like when I was going to school, I was always pursuing a career where I knew that I would be able to, make good money and then also have a career for like a long time without really thinking about what it was exactly that I like wanted to do. Because there was a lot of like interests that I had, but I feel like I never pursued them because I was like, oh, that's not gonna make me enough money. That's not gonna be able to like provide for my family, things like that. So I wish, I would have explored some of those things a little bit more. I do like in college, I did take some classes that I was interested in, like psychology, where I was debating on whether I wanted to go into psychology, things like that, which that was really helpful. But I feel like there was other like more artistic, you know, um, classes that I wish I would have taken just to see how I felt about it, maybe pursue something else there instead of just trying to focus just like on the healthcare field, things like that, just because that's what I was always told that I would have like, a career for a long time. But they never like really talk about like, oh, you also need to think about your mental health and if it's what you really want to do. It was just
Your
always
physical
like,
health.
yeah, it was just always like you just gotta find a job where you can provide for your family, things
Yeah.
things like that. So that was, yeah, definitely like my experience growing up. And like you said, I feel like our siblings might have gotten like a little bit more relaxed, just depending on how they were. I know my brother was like kind of like a troublemaker, so he definitely got that talk like, you know, you need to go to school, you need to do this and that. But I feel like encouraging them to pursue more of like their interests instead of something that's just gonna make them money because they might not be happy with it, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about more of like you said, their mental and physical health instead of just money.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like my
Yeah.
sister got the opposite situation. I think she got your situation, whereas like I feel like your brother and me were basically living the same life kind of. Like I grew up pretty much rebellious, and then my sister grew up seeing like what was that like and not wanting to do that. So she's like the opposite of me, and she's very smart. She's a very good girl, and so she did things way better than I did, and I commend her for it. Um, yeah, definitely not saying like a lot of this stuff was my parents' fault. Like I didn't feel pressured by them to pick a career and then go down that route. They just told me to find something that will make money, of course. That was always the number one thing. Um, and always like trying to get a degree to finish working or so that when I do get jobs, like it's not that I'm getting the shittiest jobs. And like it's like now having gone through college twice, getting a bachelor's degree the second time, it didn't feel like much of a difference, honestly. Like I having a degree helps, I guess, but like I have friends that didn't even graduate college that are doing so much better than I am.
Yeah.
And they went to school for the same thing. And so I'm just like, where did I fuck up?
Yeah.
Like what's going on here? And so, you know, you're being told that go to school, get good grades and all this other stuff and you're supposed to get a job. And that's what my parents believed too. And that was the dream that they were sold on. And so they pretty much expected that to happen to me. But for me, like my mom was telling me that, oh, I should get a office job. And I'm just like, that sounds boring. I don't want to do that. So I decided to go down automotive and like realizing later that I was just like, I can't do this forever because this is very physically demanding. And I remember like my back was hurting already and I was 18.
Yeah.
Isn't that nuts? Like I was 18 and having back pains. And so I was just like, I don't think I can do this forever. And so eventually I left that and then just realizing maybe this isn't the career for me. And like I shouldn't do what people have been telling me to do because that was the advice my high school teacher told me to do was just like go down this route, just keep your nose to the grindstone. I'm sure a lot of older generations heard that.
Just work hard.
Yeah, keep your nose down, keep your head down, and work hard. You're gonna make it. I'm just like, well, to what end? Like, am I gonna work until I retire, or am I gonna work until I die?
Yeah, and I think if you're like an immigrant child and you have a sibling, especially like an older sibling, I feel like you know you shouldn't let the comparison that your parents make between you two or how many other siblings you have dictate like how what you want to pursue. I think younger siblings or other siblings in general should just be encouraged to pursue like their own path, you know, because I feel like just comparing siblings is never going to work. So I feel like that discourages them instead of helping encourage them to pursue their own career, things like that.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And with that, I'm gonna stop talking. So that was pretty much our whole immigration stories and experience. Very condensed.
Yeah, very condensed.
There's definitely a lot more that had happened, but you know, we had to speed through it and keep it to under an hour. I'm sure we went over it. Just me alone probably went over it. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Sitting and Talking.
Yes.
And if whoever's watching out there who have gone through similar experiences, let us know in the comments.
It'd be interesting to know how your immigration story was, or if you can relate a lot to what we talked about. So that would be nice to know.
All right, everybody, like and subscribe. Check out our other videos and episodes somewhere, and then subscribe to my channel, and we will catch you in the next one.
Yep.
Peace.
Bye.